So welcome to the June 15th, 2020 electronic meeting of the City Council. We are meeting electronically due to the COVID-19 coronavirus pandemic in accordance with Governor Sununu's Emergency Order Number 12, pursuant to Executive Order 2020-04. Please note that in accordance with the Governor's Emergency Order, we have provided public notice of the necessary information for accessing this meeting. Instructions are provided on our agenda and on the City of Concord's website at concordnh.legistar.com/calendar.aspx. We're utilizing the Zoom platform for this electronic meeting. All members of the City Council have the ability to communicate contemporaneously during this meeting, and the public has access to listen and, if necessary, participate in this meeting through clicking on the following website address: us02web.zoom.us/j/857-461-02836. If any member of the public does not have website access, they may dial the telephone number 929-205-6099 and enter the webinar ID number 857-4610-2836. For those who want to provide testimony in the public hearing portion of tonight's meeting, and you are connected to the Zoom website, you may click on the raised hand icon in the attendees section to make your request. And when the time is appropriate, you'll be recognized by me and you will provide your testimony. For members of the public who are participating by phone, you may dial *9 to alert me that you want to testify. We will not be using the chat function in Zoom for this meeting. Please note that testimony is only allowed for agenda items and have been scheduled for a public hearing. And public participation is not authorized for any other items on the agenda. If anyone has a problem accessing the meeting, please call 603-230-4619 or send an email to citycouncilmeeting@concordnh.gov. In the event the public is unable to access the meeting, we will adjourn the meeting and have it rescheduled for another time. Please note that all votes are taken during this meeting shall be done by roll call vote. Let's start the meeting by taking roll call attendance. When you state your presence at the meeting, please also state whether there is anyone in the room with you during this meeting, which is required under the right to know law. Madam Clerk, if you could please call the roll.
Councilor Bouchard.
I'm home. I'm alone in this room.
Mayor Boulay.
I'm in my office and no one else is present.
Councilor Champlin.
I am home and alone in this room.
Councilor Fennessy.
I'm here. I'm in my home in a room by myself and hoping it remains that way.
Councilor Grady Sexton.
I am here. I am home and alone in this room currently.
Councilor Hatfield.
I'm here at home alone in this room.
Councilor Keach.
Home alone.
Councilor Kennison.
I am here and I'm home alone.
Councilor Kretovic.
I am here and currently in this room by myself.
Councilor Matson.
And I'm home alone.
Thank you. Councilor Nyan.
Present at home. My son Joe is in the same room.
Councilor Pierce.
Present at home alone.
Councilor Rice Hawkins.
Here at home alone in this room.
Councilor Todd.
Here at home alone in this room.
Councilor Werner.
Sorry about that. Home alone in this room.
Thank you.
Great. Good to see everybody. Just a reminder that if you have any questions or trouble accessing this meeting, please call 603-230-4619 or send an email to citycouncilmeeting@concordnh.gov. Reminder for the council members, please mute yourself when you're not speaking. Please click on the raised hand icon in the participant section of your Zoom screen. Also, if you're viewing in the gallery view, wave your hand in front of the camera to make sure you are heard. And in your Zoom screen, change your view to the upper right corner from speaker view to gallery view to see all participants. So with that, the first item I have on the agenda is for the approval of the minutes, which are from the June 4th, 2020 Finance Committee.
Move approval. Second.
Motion
Mattson,
made.
second.
Motion made by Mayor Pro Tem, seconded by Matt, Councilor Mattson. Anyone have any comments? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, will you call the roll, please?
Councilor Bouchard.
Yes.
Mayor Boulay,
Yes.
Councillor Champlin,
Yes.
Councillor Fennessy,
Yes.
Councillor Grady Sexton,
Yes.
Councillor Hatfield,
Yes.
Councillor Keach,
Yes.
Councillor Kennison,
Yes.
Councillor Kretovic,
Yes.
Councillor Matson,
Yes.
Councillor Nyan,
Yes.
Councillor Pierce,
Yes.
Councillor Rice Hawkins,
Yes.
Councillor Todd,
Yes.
and Councillor Werner.
Yes.
Great. And then the minutes are approved. Takes us to this evening's public hearings. We have 4 public hearings. We have the budget, we have the closeouts, we have the capital projects, and we also have the sewer rates as well. So we're going to, I would suggest, we've done this in the past and it seems to have worked okay. Sometimes for members of the public, it's hard to disseminate, am I supposed to speak now or later at another one? That if we could open it up to the public and anyone wishing to testify any one of these 4 items, it might make it easier. So if you, in fact, if you want to talk about one capital project and something in general fund, they could do that as well. Is that something that might be accessible? Okay with everyone?
Yes.
Yes.
Sounds good.
Okay. So Madam Clerk, I apologize, but and then of course I'm after our public hearing, then we'll take these up individually for voting purposes. Madam Clerk, I'm sorry, but could you read items 7, 8, 9, and 10, please?
Absolutely. So the first one is a resolution fixing and determining the amount of money to be appropriated by the City of Concord for fiscal year 2021, ending June 30th, 2021, for the special revenue funds, enterprise funds, debt service funds, and de minimis accounts. Next item is a resolution for the annual capital closeout and repurposing of capital project funds. Then you have a resolution authorizing and appropriating for fiscal year 2021 the sum of $9,866,500 for capital projects and authorizing the issuance of bonds and notes in the amount of $6,813,000 for various capital projects, more specifically identified within the budget document. And last, you have an ordinance amending the Code of Ordinances, Title I, General Code, Chapter 1, Government Organization, by amending our Schedule 1 of Article 1-5, Fees, Fines, and Penalties for sewer rates.
Okay, so who's the host? Tom, or is it Mr. Manager, or is it Finance Director? Who's our host this evening? Madam Clerk? Are you the
This
host?
is Brian LeBrun. I'm the host tonight.
Okay. LeBrun, can you tell me if we have anyone with their hand raised wishing to testify?
Not yet, but let's give it a moment.
Okay, I'll tell you what, as we wait for that, we have several, actually, you know what? I have Ms. Venator would like to testify. Could we recognize her, please?
Yes, there's Rachel Venator.
Yes, please. If you could unmute her and let her testify, that'd be great. Good evening. Welcome.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm attending this meeting tonight as I've emailed all of you to oppose budget increases to the police department Concord in the wake of recent current events. As I've been informed, most of the police funding goes to costs, and the police department is currently understaffed and looking to fill positions. However, I believe that this position should be left vacant, as the police system in the United States is an inherently racist system that even extends to New Hampshire, though in Concord we have better regulations on use of force than other places. For example, in Executive Counselor Belinsky's article in the Monitor on June 8th, he documented how Black people in New Hampshire are more than 4 times more likely than white people to be arrested for marijuana possession. So even though we may think that we're removed from some of the problems facing the rest of the country, we really aren't, and we need to act accordingly. I'm particularly concerned because in my correspondence with Councilor Grady Sexton, I was sent a document outlining the goals for the police department for the year, and I read that the police department has streamlined the process and changed the way we onboard employees with the hope that we can recruit and hire in a shorter amount of time. Knowing this information and knowing the current context and knowing that we have a review of police department policies on June 29th, it really seems irresponsible to me to continue to allow the funding that will allow for these streamlined hirings in a time when the very practices of the police are under question.
Okay. Do you have anything else you'd like to share?
No, that was what I came here to say.
Great, appreciate that. Does anybody have any questions for Ms. Venator? Councilor Hatfield.
Thank you. I just wanted to thank Ms. Venator for coming and for speaking at the hearing. And I'm curious if she lives in my ward, so I was wondering if she could just let us know if she lives in Concord, and if so, if she knows which ward she's in.
Oh, I'm from Ward 10. I'm not currently in Concord because I took a temporary job away from Concord, but that's where I grew up. That's where it's home for me and where I'll be coming back to.
Great, thank you.
Anybody else have any questions? Seeing none. Thank you very much. I really appreciate you coming out to testify tonight, and I'm sorry for having to do this over Zoom, but I'm glad you were able to participate.
Thank you for listening.
Thank you. So while we wait for someone else who may want to testify, we have received several correspondences that I would like to be read in the record, and I'm going to recognize our Assistant City Manager, Mr. Bahia, to read those into the record, please.
Good evening, Your Honor, members of council. So I have 5 pieces of testimony from Mr. Roy Schweiker. So I'll be reading those verbatim for the record. First one dates Thursday, May 28th. It was regarding the library. It reads, "This is intended as testimony to be read into the record by city staff at the Finance Committee meeting, but I've circulated copies early to a few members. I feel that the 2021 goals for the library should explicitly include planning and executing select operations during the pandemic, since it will likely extend over much of that period. The library was woefully unprepared and their response seriously deficient. I will include some suggested operations below. Many library issues can be traced to the revolving door of staff tenure. I can remember when department heads had typically been at the library for decades, whereas now 3 of the top 4 positions were outside hires, and the 4th had been at the library for only a few years. These people are technically capable, but seem to have little connection to the community or the patrons, as evidenced by their pathetic response to the pandemic. Most of the junior staff are part-timers who turn over frequently. Over 40% of the library's full-time equivalents are part-timers, which is far above any other city department. My suggestions deal with the above. Convert 2.0 of the 4.67 FTE library technician and library assistant 2 positions now held by part-timers to full-time through attrition. Make it part of the job description of the top 4 library employees that they be training a lower level employee in their job to cover time off and maybe replace them ultimately. The current library response to the pandemic is to tell patrons to use the internet without providing internet access, of course. I would suggest that the following are the minimum services that the library should provide during the pandemic. Reference librarian to be available by phone during all traditional library hours, including extending winter hours all summer. The need for information has never been greater. Salaries already budgeted. Return to curbside book loans. Get more book return bins to be rotated so books remain in bin 3 days before retrieval by staff. Goodwill now does this with donations. Provide internet service to patrons. I know one woman who hadn't checked her email in 6 weeks. That was a couple of weeks ago. And another whose Concord tax bill is greater than her paycheck, who can apply for a better job with both the library and the unemployment office closed. One method would be to set up widely spaced terminals in the Green Street Community Center and sanitize between users. Another would be to loan out laptops to a lucky 3 dozen patrons for the duration, like some school districts. any extra expense to be paid for by furloughing unneeded employees who will make more money from unemployment anyway. That concludes Mr. Schweiker's first piece of testimony. The second correspondence from Mr. Schweiker dated Thursday, May 28th in reference to Parks and Recreation. Quote beginning, "This is intended as testimony to be read into the record by city staff at the Finance Committee meeting, but I have circulated copies early to a few members. First, I would like to state that I feel that the present City Council meeting format, which requires participants to either have internet access or pay by the minute for long distance call, unfairly excludes the disadvantaged members of the community. If City Council meetings are held at the City Auditorium, there would be plenty of room for social distancing. I feel that the 2021 goals for Parks and Recreation should explicitly include planning and executing select operations during the pandemic, since it will likely extend over much of that period. While I understand that many of the summer operations are traditionally designed for youth, I will limit my discussion to senior activities with which I am more familiar. While many senior citizens have both the ability and the desire to hunker down for the duration of the pandemic, others are going stir crazy and could benefit from relatively safe activities. Stay-at-home orders and travel restrictions may inhibit visits by family and friends, particularly those out of state, and more social contact could be beneficial. I note that an organization that rents remote cabins which cannot reasonably be scrubbed between rentals has chosen to rent only for weekends and let the positive viruses die off before the next rental. Similarly, if senior activities were held on Mondays and Fridays, there would be less worry about cleaning between. I note that the popular Out to Lunch program requires no use of city facilities and could be reinstated immediately now that restaurants are open. Senior walking inside the Heights Community Center would allow weather-independent exercise with minimal interaction with other age groups less interested in social distancing. It might be that card and game playing required too much contact to be feasible during the pandemic, but knitting, coloring, book discussion, and a senior coffee could reasonably be conducted with everyone 6 feet or more apart. If the city cannot provide programs when they are most needed, maybe they should close the community center permanently and not provide them at all. That concludes that testimony. Item number 3 from Mr. Schweiker, dated Thursday, May 28th, regarding the capital budget. Quote, "I believe that the Store Street North extension is premature as the I-93 project isn't even fully designed yet and won't be built for years. Maybe we can even get the feds to pay if it isn't already built. I also feel that a new TIF district should be used to fund this project, and if additional development won't pay for it, then it shouldn't be built. This should be removed from the FY 2021 budget." Concludes that item. Item number 4, dated Thursday, June 4th, also from Mr. Schweiker, just a subject line testimony on city budget. Quote, "I have already submitted testimony on the library and Parks and Recreation, which I won't repeat, but I would like to extend that testimony to all departments. Specifically, every department's goals for FY 2021 must include developing and implementing a plan for operations in line with COVID-19 guidelines. Further, I would insist that any plan requiring use of a telephone must utilize local or toll-free numbers and not long-distance numbers. And if using the internet to access city services is a requirement, then the city must provide internet access, as not all city residents own computers. A city department could either provide a clean room, which outsiders could use for electronic access, or they could induce the library to provide general access. I feel that the current system, which requires some residents to pay to access city council meetings, would probably fall afoul of the ACLU and the U.S. Department of Justice. I am particularly concerned by statements regarding the assessment of commercial property. The property tax is a wealth tax based on the present value of the future income from that property, and using a discount rate of 2%, a generous estimate of current interest rates, the current year income from a property makes up only 3% of the property value. The city finance manager no doubt can more clearly explain what I am talking about. Yet commercial assessments in the city are based on only 1 year's income, which would drastically undervalue a property if that year is abnormally low due to a virus. I would suggest the city move to a multi-year assessment to more accurately reflect true values, as otherwise commercial tax revenues will fall and residents will have to make up the difference. Concludes that item. The last piece of correspondence from Mr. Schweiker is dated today. Subject line, expanded testimony on city budget. Quote, I would like to expand my previous testimony on the city budget in view of the lame attempts some departments have made, maybe to avoid reopening. Public health experts predict that the virus will linger through the summer, maybe with another peak in the fall. While we can hope they are wrong, sound planning would require every department's goals for FY 2021 to include developing and implementing a plan for operations next year in line with COVID-19 guidelines. Specifically, no department should expect to provide services outside or in a tent in November. It gets cold and wet here, so let's make the change now. And if large gatherings are prohibited, then more numerous small gatherings with sign-up required is a better solution than no gatherings. And it's not like the staff don't exist. Some specific complaints about services offered last week are. The police department needs to provide an inside space where those fleeing domestic abuse or other violent crime can take immediate shelter and other screening interviews can take place. I would have thought that the existing lobby, which is small and easy to clean, and receptionists are protected by glass would be ideal. But if not, another space must be found. The fire department must find an indoor location to meet vendors, contractors, and other appropriate visitors. The recreation department must reopen in-person senior programs. Even if the 10-person limit returns, they should take place with advanced, even if the 10-person limit returns, they should take place with advanced sign-up required. This might not include cards and games where close seating is required, but 6-foot spacing would work for exercise and meetings. Some seniors will still prefer to stay home, but others are getting stir crazy, lacking jobs and other activities, and meeting with other seniors is safer than venturing into the world at large. Speaking of safety, I understand there are many issues with reopening pools, but is allowing kids to swim unsupervised in the Merrimack River really any safer? So long as the library cannot reopen the building, a cleaning nightmare, they should offer as many options as possible and not just say, use the internet, without providing guidance or access. Since a closed building requires less staff, the library should be open winter hours all summer until the building opens. This would include a 7-day curbside delivery of materials and telephone access to reference librarians. There should also be public internet access using library computers, either workstations set up somewhere for short-term use, laptops loaned out curbside for outside use, or loaned for longer periods like DVDs. I note that even after 2 months for planning library material delivery, required librarians standing in the rain with umbrellas, so I can see why it isn't popular with them. However, if the table was set even with the doors, the librarians could shelter inside and only rarely would go out into the rain. End of Mr. Schweiker's testimony.
Thank you for reading that into the record. Very much appreciated. It appears Councilor Kretovic has a question.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. City Manager, my experience with Zoom, which is pretty extensive because I use it every single day in my job, is that so long as you are calling within your country, it is a toll-free number. If you choose to use a Canadian number or another country, then you are paying long-distance fees. Is that the same contract that we have for our public hearings?
I believe if you call from a cell phone, it is not, but if you call from a landline, it is a charge. There's a charge.
Can we just double check that, because I don't believe that's true. I believe it's anywhere in the country. It's a toll-free call regardless of landline or cell phone.
I'm not an expert at all in any way on telephone.
Thanks. I highlight these numbers all day long for people. Secondary, is it possible that we could post on the city, the door to the library, people that are seeking to connect with the New Hampshire Employment Security, that they can call 271-7700. It is their emergency hotline, and they will help people that are seeking new jobs, internet, etc.
Of course.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any other attendees who would like to testify? Or anyone calling in?
I do not see anybody else that has a hand raised.
Okay. Do you mind if we just wait a little bit here and just make sure we have everybody the opportunity to do that?
Sounds prudent, Your Honor.
It looks like we do have some attendees who are other than city employees. I just want to make sure they're welcome to come testify if they wish. Councilor Hatfield?
Yes, I have a question whenever it makes sense to ask it.
You know what? Why don't you go ahead now, and that way we can. Maybe somebody will jump in the meantime.
Okay. It's a question for the city manager, I think. Several of us, I believe, have received emails consistent with the testimony we heard earlier about reducing the police budget. And I wanted to ask him a couple clarifying questions because one of the emails, at least one that I received, the person referred to $1 million increase in the city budget. And I wanted to just ask the city manager if he could provide what the correct number is for any increase to the city budget. And then related to that, there's been some reference to an increase in employees in the police department. And I believe that the increase is just one position. And so I wanted to ask the city manager if he could just comment or just correct what the number is, not only for the dollars, but also the positions.
Okay, so the question regarding the increase in the budget, is that the overall budget or is that what you're looking for? The overall budget increase, number change?
She asked.
No, it was for the police budget, actually.
Yeah, let me. $1.1 million. It's $1.1 million. And you'll recall there was really several parts to that. I probably explained three pieces, which I think answers your second question. The first part is you'll recall we were trying to, and we've been very successful as a matter of fact, changing the health insurance plans for many of the employees to a high deductible plan, which would save dollars on the benefits costs for the city, for the taxpayers. And the negotiated change for that was an increase in salary to help offset that change in benefits, that reduction in the benefit cost. So that was part of it. You'll start to see those savings and benefits as the years go on. So those are really for future years, second year, third year. And of course, these are multi-year contracts. Part two of that, why those dollar amounts are there, is you recall that when we looked at the police budget, particularly patrol costs, what we found was the competitive salaries that we had for the progression of somebody for their position through their career was less than in other communities. And we wanted to be more competitive to be able to attract quality officers and not have people go to other places. So really what was happening is we were, when it came time to being competitive with other departments throughout the state, and obviously we're competing with Massachusetts and other area states, our salaries weren't there. So if we want a better quality officer, the city council made the decision to pay for that. The third part of that was, you remember in January of January 2020, there was we brought to you the concern that the police department is so young, relatively speaking. We have a considerable number of officers with 5 years or less of experience. And when we look at the organizational structure, one of the problems we had was years ago, we actually had more people in the higher levels in the police department, so to be able to mentor and teach and train the younger officers as they came through. So the police chief, Brad Osgood, and I came to you and said, we need to add a deputy chief's position, which you added in January, but we funded it out of existing funds. So what you'll see in this budget is that one increase in the police officer position, but it is the deputy chief's position to ensure training and protocol and make sure we're doing things properly and making sure the young officers on the street are properly prepared to do their job correctly. And that's really what makes up those elements of the increases in the police department budget.
Thank you.
Yeah, I see several people who want to speak. I don't see, Councilor Kennison, I see your hand. I'll be with you. I don't see any other attendees wishing to testify. One last time, do we have anybody on the phone who might want to share their thoughts tonight?
No, we do not.
Okay, so at this time, unless anyone objects, I would close the public hearing on these four hearings. And then why don't we go to deliberation and or comments and questions. The first person I have recognized is Councilor Champlin, and the second counselor I have Councilor Kennison. So Councilor Champlin.
Thank you, Your Honor. This is a follow-up to Councilor Hatfield's question. Does that 1.1 million figure include capital expenditures, Mr. City Manager?
No, it does not. There's some monthly capital expenditures, but that is really general fund costs.
It's 797.
Oh, I'm sorry. Actually, we just double checked that. And
is it 797 and change?
$436. Yes, I just got that from the deputy chief.
I feel gratified because that's the figure that I came up with. Thank you.
Thank you.
So why don't you repeat that one more time?
Sure. $797,436, not 1.1 million, as I told you earlier.
Follow up, Your Honor?
Please.
And am I correct that 790,000 of that is wages and fringe benefits?
I believe that's correct, yes.
Thank you. And some change. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Kennison.
Thank you. My questions are about community policing, and I want to make sure that I am correct in that we are focusing on more community policing. And the other comment that I have, or question, is what is our police department doing in terms of review, given the current problems in the country? Will we be
I don't understand the second question.
Oh, okay, it wasn't very clear. I'm wondering what initiatives the police department may be taking in looking at their protocols and procedures regarding use of force in light of the Black Lives Matter interest in our country.
Okay, why don't I bring the police chief on for that? There is a whole series of goals regarding community policing and actions we're taking in the budget, which I presented to you. But why don't I bring the police chief on, Brad Osgood, to talk to that.
I think I'm in.
Yes.
Okay, so the police department has been doing a lot of community policing for a number of years, really ramped up since 2014, 2015. But the question that you asked is what is the police department doing as far as reforms? Is that the question?
I think that's a good summary, yes.
Okay, so one of the things that we recently did is we published our use of force policy. It's on our website, it's on the main page. And certainly as a command staff, we will continue to look at just different training opportunities and other working with other, hold on a second.
Thank you.
Sorry about that. We're working with, other police departments, associations, and really trying to determine, make sure that we're all on the same page and have best practices in place.
That answer your question? Okay. Does anybody else have any other questions? I apologize. Councilor Todd.
Thank you, Your Honor. This is a question for the chief, if he's still on. there was a comment made in the testimony that we heard this evening, and indeed also present in the outline of the initiatives for the Concord Police Department regarding streamlining as to training. Could you take a few moments and refresh our recollection and remind us what specifically that means? Thank you.
Okay, I believe the question had to do with streamlining the hiring process. And what we have done is, as you know, we've talked about over the last few years, is that it's been very difficult to actually get people to come and take the police exams. So what we really have done is we've almost created this on-demand type hiring where as soon as they apply, we reach out to them, we bring them in for an interview, and we can actually we can do a lot of things with that one person in one day. For instance, we can do an interview, we can do the written test, the physical agility test, all in one day, rather than having this one day, in the month of May, where you try to get 200 people to show up and test them all at the same time. So we haven't changed the way we the process. They still have to take a polygraph exam. They still have to take a psychological exam. They still have to go through an extensive background check, a medical check, a drug screen. So the process, we just do it a little bit differently. We work with the candidates individually as opposed to in large groups.
Thank you. Could I have a follow-up, Your Honor?
Please.
Thank you. Thank you, Chief. Yes, that was my question. And actually, I do have then one separate question now regarding specifically training. And that was hiring, what you covered there. But as to training, we have had, I recall, some discussions at prior budget meetings and council meetings, specifically discussing the practices of other communities where they would, for example, hire, night security agents and other people, and not necessarily adequately train them and put them on the force quickly. So would you mind please reviewing for us what the current positions on training in that regard are for Concord Police? Thank you.
So when we hire a police officer, they're assigned to a lieutenant for 3 weeks before they go to the police academy. The police academy training is 16 weeks. And once they get out of the police academy, they're with a field training officer for an additional 16 weeks, where we assess their abilities to head out onto solo patrol.
Thank you.
That's it? Okay. Council Warner, please.
Thank you, Your Honor. I have maybe an observation or comment, not so much a question to, since we're in this discussion around policing. I think it might be advantageous. I think it might be a good public service for the city, for the police department to communicate exactly what our training and protocols are in order to better communicate to our citizens in terms of their own confidence in our department, which is run very well, which is trained very well, very highly, in terms of what our procedures are, and frankly, what they're not, in terms of particular types of response, chokeholds. I know that the academy and at least our city, I'm not as familiar with every other municipality in the state, do not train in that particular way, do not endorse the chokehold approach to restraint. But I do think that it would be a good thing for our city to communicate, again, to our citizens exactly what our training and protocols are in order to provide some confidence to our citizens.
Thank you. Councilor Chaplin.
Thank you, Your Honor. This circles back to Councilor Todd's question, which I think was in response to Ms. Venator's testimony. This is a question for Chief Osgood. Chief, would it be fair to say that even though we are streamlining the hiring process in order to meet our needs to fill vacant positions in the department, that we are in no way diminishing the stringency with which we are recruiting, nor the training that is required in order to become an officer on the Concord Police Department?
That's correct, Counselor. We are in no way lowering our standards. Our standards are very high to begin with. If you can get hired by the Concord Police Department, it's quite an accomplishment. That's how difficult it is to pass all of the 9 phases of our testing process.
Thank you, Chief. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you. Anyone else? I would just simply add, have you all received the form email? It gave you could put your own subject line in, but it basically started, "Dear Concord government officials, my name is, and I'm a resident of, I'm ready to demand that the council adopt the budget for the people." Did you all receive those?
Many. Thank you, Your Honor.
So I have tried my best to keep track of everyone. I received approximately 50. Of the 50 that I received, 28 of those were from either out of state or non-Concord residents. There are about 22 who were Concord residents. And I tried to be pretty liberal, and they didn't say I gave them the benefit of being from Concord. I was going to forward those to the clerk just for the record. My understanding is, from my simple research, is it comes from a crowdsourcing mechanism called defund12.org, which enables individuals to go on and to send a blast email to all the elected officials. And if you go check it out, you can see it's across the country that's happening. But I just want to make sure that, just note for the record that we received them, and I'll forward the ones that listed from Concord to the clerk for the record. Council Fennessy.
Thank you, Your Honor. Just had a couple questions for the chief. First, I want to thank you for putting the use of force policy up on the website. I found it very helpful in reviewing myself. It talks about in the use of force policy about an annual review that takes place. And I'm wondering if that annual review has taken place yet for this calendar year, and if you anticipate any changes in the policy as a result of that review.
Thank you for the question. So we are always doing an annual review, so it's an ongoing review. But that has recently been completed, and it's currently being compiled right now.
Quick follow-up.
Please.
Thank you, Your Honor. Do you anticipate any additional policies of the police force being posted on the website besides the use of force one?
I have just discussed that with the city solicitor, and so we'll look at each individual policy and make access available if when appropriate.
Thank you.
Okay. Do we have anybody else who has any? And we can talk about anything in any one of these 4 items, whether it be capital budget or operating budget. Councilor Hatfield. Councilor Hatfield.
Thank you. I wondered, Councilor Grady Sexton spoke very briefly about the fact that the Public Safety Committee was going to be taking up some of these issues next month. And for those folks who hadn't joined us before, I wondered if she could just speak briefly to that again. I think that might be helpful.
Councilor Grady Sexton.
Sure, thank you, Councilor Hatfield. So on Monday the 29th at 3 p.m., the Public Safety Advisory Board is going to have its regular meeting. That meeting will include agenda items that will do our annual report. We'll receive an annual report from both the police and fire department. We've also added to the agenda a review of the use of force policy and we're really hoping to break it down according to sort of the 8 questions that we are being asked by constituents to review from the 8 Can't Wait campaign. And so the chief is prepared, and perhaps the city solicitor as well, to really do a pretty thorough overview of what our current policies are, and to give any input about any changes they feel need to be made. We'll also have an opportunity for the public to weigh in and to ask questions about that particular policy. I do anticipate that in future Public Safety Advisory Board meetings, we'll look a little bit further into the issue of community policing. But in terms of the Monday meeting, it'll be specific to the use of force policy as well as the annual reports. Is that what you were looking for, Counselor?
Yes. Do you mind if I ask a follow-up, Your Honor?
Of course.
Okay. Thank you so much. Really appreciate your leadership on that committee and convening that important conversation. Do you expect, I know it's a couple weeks away, do you expect that that would be a Zoom meeting and that's how people would participate?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
Thank
and
you very
I'm not
much.
sure. Thank you. Yeah, no, thank you, Counselor. I would defer to the chief, but my understanding is that the information, the participation information for the Zoom meeting will become available and will be listed on the website, as well as the agenda.
Thank you very much. Any other questions regarding this or any other portion of the budget?
I had another question, Your Honor.
Please.
Counselor Pierce had asked for some information. He's going to try to quickly get to it regarding parking, unpaid parking citations. And Mr. Walsh had provided a memo. And I just wanted to make sure I understand that. There's a 5-year period that's covered, and the total unpaid citations was $782,933. But what would our current balance be? And I apologize if it's in the attached spreadsheets. I just didn't have a chance to look at this in depth.
Mr. Manager, could you bring in Mr. Walsh?
Good evening, Your Honor, members of the council. Councilor Hatfield, your question was, what is the outstanding dollar amount that is owed? Is that correct?
Yeah. Yes, please.
It is. So for those, we went back for 5 years, and that period was through May 25th, 2020. And at that time, the balance was $782,993.
Can I ask a follow-up?
Please.
I think Counselor Pierce had suggested a couple of suggested changes in our approach. And I'm wondering, in light of that, is staff or is the city manager thinking about making a change in our approach to trying to collect some of those funds, or is the recommendation to continue with how we've been handling that?
I can recognize the manager or Mr. Champlin if you want to weigh in. Councilor Caston, I do see your hand. I'll be right with you. I got one person in front of you, but
Your Honor, you might want to recognize Councilor Pierce because I believe, based on informal conversations, that he's hoping to work with the parking committee on this issue.
Okay, Councilor Pierce.
Thank you, and thank you for the lead-in, Councilor Hatfield. I raised my hand just after yours to bring this up under 11A. Yes, that is true. I really appreciate the report that Mr. Wall sent us. At a prior financial meeting, I talked about establishing a goal under the parking fund to recover a certain percentage of the delinquent fines. But in retrospect, I think we've had some good conversations about this. I get the sense, hopefully Mr. Walsh and the city manager get the sense that this is something that we need to watch. I am going to ask to be invited to the next parking committee. Councilor Champlin said I could go. He would eventually invite me, but I in no way want to be a member of that committee. But I do have some suggestions. I want to see what they've done in the past, and it's pretty much thankless work. So So instead of listed goals, hopefully the council will continue to look at this issue and expect periodic reports from the parking fund committee in order to measure success based on a reduction in uncollected fines. If we don't get a hold of this, I'm sure we all realize that the burden of well-lit parking garages and equipment on the streets that work will fall on those that pay for the parking, and we want to make sure that everyone's paying their fair share and getting it well. So I would ask that we continue to keep an eye on this, but I don't necessarily want to make it a goal because I don't really know what that number is. So I would leave it at that if that's clear.
Okay, I'm going to recognize Councilor Champlin and then Councilor Kennison.
Thank you, Your Honor. I would just mention that Councilor Pierce, our meetings of the parking committee are public meetings, and you're welcome to drop in anytime. But certainly we'll work to put you on the agenda to have a discussion about this issue. We can review the conversations the parking committee has already had about tickets that are in arrears and attempts to collect them. And we'd love to harvest the great ideas that you have and see if we can make some more inroads on this topic. And we appreciate your attention to this and bringing it up. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilor Kennison?
Yeah. I would appreciate whatever input Councilor Pierce can provide to the committee. This is a difficult issue. One of the things that I wanted to address were collection letters. Currently, unpaid tickets are handled in-house by the parking division. Collection letters are sent every 45 days to vehicle owners. What I want to refresh my memory on is for how long a period of time do we send out these letters, and what does it cost in terms of postage and staff time to send out a letter?
My recollection is my recollection from the parking committee testimony was that Mr. Florence said that they send out between 11 and 12 reminders.
12.
Is that correct, Mr. Walsh?
Your Honor, I believe it was something like that as well, and I'm sure that's something we'll revisit when the parking committee discusses this issue in the future.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Anyone else? Any other topics people have? Okay, I had a couple. First, I wanted to talk about pools. The manager, as you might remember, did budget money for pools. Then we heard from the manager that due to the lack of direction from the state, that he had made the decision to not open the pools this year. Since that has happened, recently we have gotten direction from the state regarding pools, and I would ask that the manager do his best to reconsider and look at what the possibilities are to open up some of the pools, given I understand there are going to be some challenges with staffing and looking at what the restrictions might be. But I would ask you all to join me in encouraging the manager to take a look and to open some of the pools if possible. I understand if you can't open all of them, that's fine. But if you can open a couple, that would be great. My concern is that people may choose alternatives that aren't quite as safe, and we wouldn't want to see anybody get hurt. So that would be my request. And it's not a budget change because the manager had already appropriated those dollars. Councilor Nyan?
Thank you, Ron. I'm glad you brought that up. I know it's not a formal motion, but I second your sentiments. Anything that the manager can do to open up, even if it's one pool, is greatly appreciated. It's not a budget item as it's already been put in, and thank you for bringing that up. I couldn't agree with you more.
Thank you. Councilor Keach?
Yes, I would just reiterate what Councilor Nowin said. Having grown up in Concord, if the pools aren't open, you're either in the river or at the quarries, and that poses a much greater risk to kids. So whatever can be done, I would encourage to be done.
Great. I appreciate that. Thank you. Anybody else have anything? Councilor Fennessy.
Thank you, Your Honor. I will just support the mayor's position on this as well. I've gotten probably more questions about what's going to happen with pools in the last 2 weeks than, with the exception of all the emails that we got regarding the policing. And I echo the concerns raised by Councilor Keach. We've already seen 2 people drown in the Merrimack River already this year. And certainly I'm concerned about where kids might be going to try and cool off if we can't provide them a safe option.
Okay. Councilor Todd.
Thank you, Your Honor. Yes, I also think it's always a great idea to try to take a second look with regard to the pools. And let's let the city manager report back to us on any possibilities that there might be. My only observation about this is that if we are only able to open up 1 or 2 pools, those pools are going to be very popular. And so I don't know how exactly you would go about crowd management there, but again, we'll see what the manager might have to say about this. It's worth a look, certainly. If I may, Your Honor, just had a couple other quick comments. One is that, again, regarding the police department, I just wanted to mention that the number of residents in my ward in Pennacook have reached out to me. None of them were in favor of defunding the police or anything in that regard. And in fact, several of them expressed great support for the police in Concord, and they are very some of them rather emotional about it. So I just wanted to add that to the mix. And finally, I just wanted to say thank you to the city manager, deputy city manager, and everyone on the city staff for putting together a really difficult but excellent budget in light of these very troubling times, and being able to be flexible and nimble, which I know that we as council will have to continue to follow up with going forward. But I think that this budget certainly sets the tone for that. So I wanted to thank all of them. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Bouchard, did you have your hand raised?
I did. I just was going to echo what has been said already about the pools. I think your idea is a great one. It's always been my concern, and why I've always supported our neighborhood pools is because when there's no pools, the river looks too inviting and it's a dangerous place to be. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Any further discussion? Okay. Madam Clerk, if you could read item 11A, please.
It's a resolution fixing and determining the amount of money to be appropriated by the City of Concord for the fiscal year 2021, ending June 30th, 2021, for the general fund, special revenue funds, enterprise funds, debt service funds, and de minimis accounts.
Thank you very much. Before I take a motion, I just want to simply note that Rule 6A, Councilor Grady Sexton, Councilor Kretovic, and myself are all declaring conflict with the Crisis Center, and Councilor Champlin is taking Rule 6A regarding the Greater Concord Chamber of Commerce. Did I miss anyone? This is the operating budget. If anybody had anything, I think I tried to get everybody, but it's okay. Seeing none. So, do we have a motion on item 11A, please?
Councilor Nine moves approval.
Kretovic seconds. Anyone?
Did you get that, Madam Clerk?
Everybody seconded.
So we do have a motion for approval and a second. I do want to bring forth one amendment. Of course, I can't find my paper. Yeah, here we are. Okay, so I apologize for having to do this, but the resolution that was read to us tonight, item 7 during the public hearing, unfortunately did not include the motion that we tentatively approved last week. And that was a motion to increase the general overhead expense budget, special programs for Concord Community Television by $57,110 and increase the general overhead revenue budget for cable TV franchise by $57,110. So because it wasn't it wasn't brought to us tonight in the resolution as amended, I'm asking that we amended it at this point and reflecting the tentative vote that we took previously.
I'll move amendment, Your Honor.
Motion made and seconded to do that. Madam Clerk, did you get that?
Was it Councilor Champlin that moved approval of that?
It was.
Bouchard, second.
Bouchard. So with that, if we could take, we have a motion on the amendment to 11A. Madam Clerk, if you call the roll on the amendment, please.
Yes. Councilor Bouchard.
Yes.
Mayor Boulay.
Yes.
Councilor Champlin.
Yes.
Councilor Grady Sexton.
Yes.
Councilor Hatfield.
Yes.
Councilor Keach.
Yes.
Councilor Kennison.
Yes.
Councilor Kretovic.
Yes.
Councilor Matson.
Yes.
Councilor Nyan.
Yes.
Councilor Pierce.
Yes.
Councilor Rice Hawkins.
Yes.
Councilor Todd.
Yes.
And Councilor Werner.
Yes.
Thank you for that. The motion is adopted. Does anybody?
Yes, too.
I'm sorry. Did your name get now called?
I didn't get called.
Madam Clerk, do you not like Councilor Fennessy?
I was saving the best for last. Councilor. Sorry.
Councilor Fennessy votes yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. With that, the motion is adopted. We have before us now item 11A, which is the motion of ought to pass as amended. Is there any further discussion? Councilor Hatfield.
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. I was wondering if now would be an appropriate time to ask about the pay-as-you-throw reinstatement, or if you'd rather take that up after this vote.
I have my whole speech prepared for the closing remarks.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, seeing none, are we ready for the vote on item 11A? Madam Clerk, will you call the roll, please?
Councilor Bouchard.
Yes.
Mayor Boulay.
Yes.
Councilor Champlin.
Yes.
Councilor Fennessy.
Yes.
Councilor Grady Sexton. Councilor Grady Sexton.
I'm sorry, yes.
Councilor Hatfield.
Yes.
Councilor Keach.
Each votes is yes.
Councilor Kennison.
Yes.
Councilor Kretovic.
Yes.
Councilor Matson.
Yes.
Councilor Nyan.
Yes.
Councilor Pierce.
Yes.
Councilor Rice Hawkins.
Yes.
Councilor Todd.
Yes.
And Councilor Werner.
Yes.
Thank you very much. With that, motion is adopted. Madam Clerk, if you could read 11B, please.
It's a resolution for the annual capital closeout and repurposing of capital project funds.
Thank you very much. We have a
Second.
motion made by Mayor Pro Tem Bouchard, seconded by Councilor Matson. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, are we ready for the question? Madam Clerk, will you call the roll, please?
Councilor Bouchard.
Yes.
Mayor Boulay.
Yes.
Councilor Champlin.
Yes.
Councilor Fennessy.
Yes.
Councilor Grady Sexton.
Yes.
Councilor Hatfield.
Yes.
Councilor Keach.
Yes.
Councilor Kennison.
Yes.
Councilor Kretovic.
Yes.
Councilor Matson.
Yes.
Councilor Nyan.
Yes.
Councilor Pierce.
Yes.
Councilor Rice Hawkins.
Yes.
Councilor Todd.
Yes.
And Councilor Werner.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Motion is adopted. Madam Clerk, item 11C, please.
It's a resolution authorizing and appropriating for fiscal year 2021 the sum of $9,866,500 for capital projects and authorizing the issuance of bonds and notes in the amount of $6,813,000 for various capital projects more specifically identified in the budget document.
Move approval.
I will second. Counselor Kretovic.
Okay, we have a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Bouchard, seconded by Councilor Kretovic. Is there any discussion on item 11C, please? This is capital budget. Okay, seeing none, ready for the question. Madam Clerk, you call the roll, please.
Councilor Bouchard.
Yes.
Mayor Boulay.
Yes.
Councilor Champlin.
Yes.
Councilor Fennessy.
Yes.
Councilor Grady Sexton.
Yes.
Councilor Hatfield.
Yes.
Councilor Keach.
Yes.
Councilor Kennison.
Yes.
Councilor Kretovic.
Yes.
Councilor Matson.
Yes.
Councilor Nine.
Yes.
Councilor Rice Hawkins.
Yes.
Councilor Pierce.
Yes.
Councilor Todd.
Yeah.
And Councilor Werner.
Yes.
Thank you very much. And with that, the motion is adopted. Madam Clerk, item 11D, please.
It's an ordinance amending the Code of Ordinances, Title I General Code, Chapter 1, Government Organization, by amending Schedule 1, Article 1-5, fees, fines, and penalties for sewer rates.
Move approval.
Second, Counselor Matson seconds.
We have a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Bouchard, seconded by Councilor Matson. Is there any discussion? Okay, seeing none, Madam Clerk, you call the roll, please.
Councilor Bouchard.
Yes.
Mayor Boulay.
Yes.
Councilor Champlin.
Yes.
Councilor Fennessy.
Yes.
Councilor Grady Sexton.
Yes.
Councilor Hatfield.
Yes.
Councilor Keach.
Yes.
Councilor Kennison.
Yes.
Councilor Kretovic.
Yes.
Councilor Matson.
Yes.
Councilor Nine.
Yes.
Councilor Pierce.
Yes.
Councilor Rice Hawkins.
Yes.
Councilor Todd.
Yes.
And Councilor Werner.
Yes.
Thank you very much. With that, motion is adopted. That completes our public hearings for this evening and brings us to our closing remarks. I hope you don't mind. I usually go last, but if you don't mind, I was going to go first tonight. That's okay. I wanted to first start off by saying thank you to City Manager Espel and to our Finance Director LeBrun, as well as all of the department heads and people who have contributed to this putting together this budget. As we said from the outset, this was not an easy budget. This is we could guess and get 9 out of 10 things right, but miss on one, and as we said before, it could throw us into a tailspin. But I think what we've done is reflective of the best of our abilities. And this will be a very different budget for me, and I think for the whole council and the city, and that this will be much more of a working document than it ever has before. Typically in the past, we have approved it after looking at it through a fine-tooth comb, and as we've done this year as well. But when we look to see what comes in for revenues in July and October and January, we're going to need to be revisiting it. And I would be asking to revisit as a finance committee or committee of the whole, because we're going to have to potentially make changes and be flexible. So maybe a few extra meetings, but I think it's important that we really stay on top of this. And I know that the manager and his team will be right there with us to bring us along. So again, I just want to say thank you. I also want to say thank you to all the counselors. I thought that the level of questions this year was outstanding. I think that we dug about as deep as we could, and given what we had, and your commitment to attending the meetings and such. And I know it can be a tough time of year because there's a lot of meetings to attend. I thought it was outstanding for everyone's participation, and so I just also want to tip that to you all as well. The second thing I want to address is, as referenced by Councilor Hatfield, on April 20th, you might remember, this year, the council chose to suspend the pay-as-you-throw program Otherwise, we all know and love it as the purple bags. And during that time, what we said is that we would continue with suspension of that program, basically primarily for two reasons. One, we were trying to recognize the fact that it was difficult for many people to get to the store to purchase the bags, and for concern of health reasons. Secondly, we had record unemployment and people losing their jobs, and there was concern about people's ability to purchase these bags. But as you know, on June 15th, today, the governor has lifted the emergency order to be stay at home. And we had said at that time that we would revisit it this time. So I would ask the council to do as we said we would originally 9 weeks ago, and reinstitute the pay-as-you-throw program on June 22nd, which would be a week from today, so that we would go back to using the purple bags. I would like to say that I have no regrets in my vote and encouraging the motion to be adopted. I will tell you that I've learned a whole lot. People sure can empty out their houses when given the opportunity, and they don't necessarily always recycle when it's up to them to do it on their own. There is a cost, and I think this is important to recognize that it was about $136,520 per month that it costs the city to suspend this program. So overall, we're looking at a $273,000 cost for the suspension of this program. I still think it was a good choice, given the consideration of where people were, but it's time to lift as the emergency order for the stay at home is lifted. I think it's time to go back to the purple bags and pay as you throw. That's number one. The second thing, and I'd ask for a motion, or we'll have a vote on that, if you will. But I also wanted to also note that there were a considerable amount of chatter on social media and otherwise of the value of the pay as you throw program. And I would simply ask that the next time the Solid Waste Advisory Committee meets, that they look at the numbers, they look at the program, and they review it as we would review anything else to make sure that it's still performing as we anticipate that it was performing before. So with that, I would open up to any comments, and then after that, I would ask for a formal vote to go back to the pay as you throw program. Councilor Kennison, you raised your hand. Councilor Kennison, I think you're on mute.
I agree it was a good decision on the council's part. What I'm wondering is, what is the process for letting people know that we are terminating or that we are initiating the use of pay-as-you-throw bags again? And would there be a grace period, so, of a few weeks, so that people could catch on to what's going on?
Well, I'll give it a first try, and then I would encourage the manager if you want to chime in as well. But I would suspect that we would inform the public, just as we informed the public that we were suspending it. All the social media platforms, press releases, and anything else we can think of. But Ms. Manager, do you have anything you could add?
No, I think that is what we would do, and there would be no grace period.
Do you have anything further, Councilor Kennison, before I move on? Okay. Councilor Keach, you had your hand raised first.
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. First of all, thank you for the council doing a great job this year. Differing opinions, which is what this process is all about. And not to throw cold water on what we've accomplished tonight, but I think next year is going to be a very difficult year. And we're going to have to make some tough decisions. And there's just a lot of unknowns. As the mayor pointed out, it's just not clear where the federal funding is coming from, state funding. So it's going to be a little different, a little tougher. But I think we ought to give ourselves a big pat on the back tonight, because I think we did a good job making this work so far. I'll leave it there.
Thank you very much. Councilor Rice-Hawkins.
Thank you. And as a member of the Solid Waste Advisory Committee, I can definitely help make sure people know when that discussion occurs. Could the city manager take a moment and share with any community members who may be listening or for councilor awareness, if somebody is having difficulty affording those purple bags, what recourse they might have within the city?
If somebody qualifies for welfare, they can go to the welfare office in Horseshoe Pond and be able to fill out the appropriate paperwork. And if they qualify, they'll be able to receive those as part of their assistance.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Hatfield.
Thank you. Councilor Rice Hawkins just asked one of my questions, and I also am a member of the Solid Waste Advisory Committee, and I look forward to working on these issues under Councilor Nyhan's leadership, because I remember when the program was instituted and he led such a good effort to educate people. And I just wanted to say I've been really impressed with the conversation on social media. A lot of people sort of having conversations among themselves about why we have the program and what the cost is. And there were several comments that included, I think, really constructive ideas. So I look forward to taking those up at the appropriate time. Thank you.
Councilor Warner.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'm very supportive of what we did, and I'm very supportive of what you're proposing. And I would add that I'm glad that there will be no grace period. I don't think we really need one. We needed one when the program first began. That was rather short, as it should have been, in terms of people to get accustomed to it. And this program has been highly successful over many years. People are very used to it now. And I'm glad that we are re-implementing it quickly.
I have Councilor Kretovic.
Your Honor.
I'm just trying to go down through the list, Councilor Kretovic. Councilor Kretovic, please.
Thank you, Your Honor. I want to make sure that we draw attention to the people that elected to continue using the purple bags during the moment of pause. People that are very conscious about recycling, people that are very attuned to the fact that garbage isn't free. They participated in that program, and it really was quite refreshing to be driving around the city any day of the week and seeing the different neighborhoods, people that did continue to participate, because ultimately that cost that we incurred, all of us as taxpayers, would have been far more elevated if those individuals that were not paying attention didn't use the purple bags during that time period. So I want to make sure that we at least thank those that did, because it was important and meaningful. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilor Pierce.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I agree with all that is said, and I will just say that being new to the council, I really am new to this program and the dollars and cents behind it. I really worked hard to find fault with this program. And, you know, it's either out of the taxpayer's dollar or it's paid for where they buy the bags. But I'm convinced that this is the right thing to do for the city, and I support the motion to stop this program now, which was the deal we made when the governor instituted his order in the first place. So thank you very much.
Thank you. I have Councilor Tennyson and Councilor Champlin.
Thank you, Your Honor. My comment on a grace period, actually what I was referring to is some people don't have access to social media, don't pay attention to it. So when they come around to collect, like on the first week that we're doing purple bags, will there be some kind of, will they pick up the other bags, and will there be some kind of sticker or notice that we are using purple bags again?
Yes. So the bags would not be picked up, and they would be noticed that they need to put, if it's trash, put it in a trash bag, and then we, of course, would be around the next week to pick that up if it's in a purple bag.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Champlin.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'm just going to take the opportunity to reiterate what I said when before we voted in favor of the suspension, which again I also support. And kudos to you for bringing it forward for the reasons that you stated. And that is, it really is important for people to understand, as others have noted, that this is a user fee, which ultimately reduces the property tax impact on many individuals. A retired couple or an individual retiree generates much less trash than a large family or a household that has a number of people living in it. And this means that many of the people who have less income have less fiscal impact, even though they do have to go to the market and pick up the purple bags, than it would if they saw the cost of waste disposal, trash disposal, integrated into their property tax bill. So having said that, I will move to reinstitute the pay-as-you-throw program as of June 22nd, I think was the date.
Yes, next Monday.
I will second.
Second.
Motion was made and seconded. I just want to make one last comment. I have somebody frantically sending me texts to remind me that the stay-at-home order has only been lifted for some. He shares with me that people 65 and older, as well as those who have underlying health conditions, are still required to stay at home. I'm going to just leave it as it stands because there are plenty of people I know 65 and older who are out and about. So anyway, just wanted to make sure we clarified that and shared that. So we have a motion. It has been duly seconded. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, you call the roll, please.
Councilor Bouchard,
Yes.
Mayor Boulay,
Yes.
Councilor Champlin, Councilor Champlin,
I'm sorry, Madam Clerk, my space bar didn't work and I had a pop-up at the same time. Yes.
thank you. Councilor Fennessy,
Yes.
Councilor Grady Sexton,
Yes.
Councilor Hatfield,
Yes.
Councilor Keach,
Yes.
Councilor Kennison,
Yes.
Councilor Kretovic,
Yes.
Councilor Matson,
Yes.
Councilor Nyan,
Yes.
Councilor Pierce,
Yes.
Councilor Rice Hawkins,
Yes.
Councilor Todd,
Yes.
and Councilor Werner.
Yes.
With that, the motion is adopted. Okay, that takes us to closure remarks. Who would like to share anything with the group? Councilor Rice Hawkins.
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you to the council. I really appreciated the comments people made last week in relation to Black Lives Matter, and in particular, the action-oriented commitments that we made on behalf of the city to ensure that racism and police brutality find no foothold in our community. I think it's really important that people hear from community leaders in this moment and know that we're taking these issues seriously and engaging proactively around them. To that end, and following up on an all-council email I sent last week, I would like for the City Council to make a formal statement condemning racism and police brutality. Even though many of us are speaking out personally, I think a formal statement from our mayor and council sends a clear and direct statement about where we stand, and it's something I've heard from many community members is important to them. The death of George Floyd and too many other Black Americans at the hand of the same institutions and departments we oversee means that we have a responsibility to make sure people know we will not allow that to happen in our community. I'd hope tonight to make a motion for the council to issue a statement and then propose a time to work out that language. This afternoon, I was encouraged to introduce an actual statement for discussion tonight. I've sent a draft to your inboxes, and I'll read that out in a moment here as well. I'm comfortable to either edit and pass a version of this tonight or to support another motion for us to meet at another date and time to discuss it further. Anyone who did reach out to me after the email I sent last week was included in an initial round of feedback, but it is important to me that every councilor has had an opportunity to consider and discuss the language. I propose this knowing that the Concord City Council has rarely issued these types of statements, but I do think in times when the institutions we are a part of and oversee have failed people of color time and again, it is really important, whether or not we've recently experienced that in our own community, that we are clear and direct in as many ways as possible. With that, I will read this statement and then I'll turn back to the mayor for discussion before we decide on which motion would be most appropriate here. So Concord stands together to reject racism and police brutality. As mayor and city councilors, we condemn the senseless deaths of Black Americans at the hands of police officers who violated their oaths to protect and serve. And we stand with people and communities across the country who are demanding a renewed focus on racial equity. We pledge to use our platform, our voices, and our policies to combat racism and inequality, to listen to the experiences of community members most impacted, and to reflect on our own roles and how to address these challenges as we shape our path forward together. Every person in our community deserves to be able to count on fair and just treatment, especially within the leadership and institutions of our democracy. Our nation's long and harmful history of systematic racism and institutionalized discrimination requires all of us to work harder to actively address and challenge racism and bias. Over the coming months, Concord plans to convene community discussions and identify action steps to ensure that we are delivering on our commitment to racial justice. Our city is also undertaking a public review of our policing and use of force practices so that community members may feel confident in our approach. The Concord Police Department has a long-standing commitment to community policing, outreach to communities of color, and measured use of force. It makes sense in these moments to engage in a public conversation about those policies and programs and identify any areas for improvement. Concord strives to be a diverse, inclusive, and welcoming community, and our commitment and examination of how policies impact people of color in our community is important and can only further benefit all the residents of our city. And with that, I will turn it back over to the mayor for discussion.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Just to clarify one comment, I was the one who asked Councilor Rice Hawkins to come forth with a statement tonight. As the initial request was to do this in a non-public session, and I think that it's really, it doesn't raise the level of 91A, and so anything like this would be discussion in public.
I would second the motion. Hatfield seconds.
So we have a motion made by Councilor Rice Hawkins, seconded by Councilor Hatfield. Excuse me, I apologize. Is there any discussion? Councilor Keach.
Thank you, Your Honor. In principle, I don't think it's the role of a council to sign to a platform like this. I agree with a lot of it, not all of it, and I just think it's the wrong direction to go into. I recall a year ago when there was the same initiative with regard to the school board, whether we should speak out, and it's been my position, it continues to be my position, that we should speak out as individuals because we're elected individually. And I think it's a mistake for the council to speak as a body because I don't think that is what democracy is all about. It's not the body. It's about each of us with our opinions. And I agree with 98% of everything Councilor Rice Hawkins is talking about, but I just think it's a bad precedent. So I'll leave it right there.
Councilor Warner.
Thank you, Your Honor. I do understand sort of where Councilor Keach is coming from, because I think among many of us, there's been a general reticence to weigh in on national issues, whether that be campaign finance or any number of things, not necessarily because we didn't individually or perhaps even a majority of us agree with any particular position or request of that sort that was brought before us. So that certainly has been our approach in the past in general terms. But I would say, given the importance, societal importance of this issue, and the fact that it touches upon a department in which we are involved with as a legislative body, I would make an exception for this particular statement. I think it's very important for a formal announcement, formal expression of our elected officials in this time and place to address this issue. So I would support the adoption of a motion to have a statement come from our city council, our mayor. I just believe it is very critically important at this time to communicate that.
Thank you very much. Council Chaplin.
Thank you, Your Honor. I deeply respect Councilor Keach's position, and I generally agree with him. I think, though, that we are really in a transformational moment right now in our nation's history where we're seeing yet another wave of attention to the interaction that the majority population in this country has had with the minority, and particularly with the African American community. Furthermore, we're starting to see a national dialogue begin, which I'm afraid, which I think has been misnamed defund the police, to start a dialogue about what are the appropriate roles for our law enforcement personnel, and are we giving them too large a portfolio and asking them to respond to situations that are generated by social ills, which, for which they may not be the right first responder. I think that's a healthy conversation for us to have. And I think that under these circumstances, if we could find consensus in this body, it would be helpful and I think reassuring to the members of the Concord community, both, of all ethnic backgrounds, to see this body take a stand and assure them that we want Concord to continue to be a welcoming community, to be a community that's known for its equity and for the excellence and public involvement of its police department. Thank you, Your Honor.
Councilor Katzner, I see you. I have two people in front of you. Councilor Kretovic, please.
Thank you, Your Honor. If I'm being honest, when I read this, I feel very defensive of our police department because I feel as though we've been making progress towards eliminating racism in our community for the past 10 years. It wasn't that long ago that we had an act of racism in the South End that spurred this community to action. It created the development of the Love Thy Neighbor, the Be the Change, and the little elements about what we've done as a community come at the end of this paragraph. I want this to be a platform where we build upon the successes we've already had and make it something that shows we made progress and perhaps there's more that we need to do. I'm actually very enthused that the Public Safety Board is going to be looking at the force policies of our police department because it does take it to a next level. And I don't mean to sound offensive, and I'm not trying to diminish the message that's here, but I feel like we're forgetting the fact that we've done so much already. Yep, we all have better that we can do. And I just wanted the police department to know that at least I recognize and other people in our community recognize the good work they're doing, and everybody has room for improvement. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Mattson.
Thank you, Your Honor. Actually, Jennifer said a lot of what I was going to say, which was great. And I've received some comments from people who are supportive of the police department as well. But that is, while this is a very important message that I think that we need to provide, I also like the idea to explain that we have made progress in that area, and especially with respect to the racial slurs that were a few years ago. And I do think that this message is very important to go out. So I will be supporting it wholeheartedly.
I have Councilor Kennison.
Thank you, Your Honor. I think perhaps the statement needs to be edited as it leans too heavily towards the police department. I think what we're talking about is institutional change across all areas of, housing, economics, healthcare, and that nationwide it's about institutional change, not just about police enforcement. And I would like to see that emphasized.
Yeah, my remarks last week were really, I think, in tune with what you're saying, and that is that we need to talk about a much broader discussion than just one aspect. I think when we talk about racism, it's included in our housing, it's included in our workforce. It's much more than just policing. But I think Councilor Rice Hawkins was focusing on police, if I'm not mistaken. Councilor Rice Hawkins?
We certainly need to address racial discrimination and inequality in all aspects of society, frankly. The pullout here about the police specifically and police brutality, and again, mindful of the great work of our police department, but also acknowledging what has happened across the nation. The reason that is so prominent is that is the experience of Black members of our community, and that is what they have been focusing on a lot. So if I want to be honest about lifting up their voices and their calls, then it is important that that is a prominent piece of this statement. Thank you.
Councilor Todd.
Well, thank you, Your Honor. I like what Councilor Kennison said, and I seem to be hearing, I think, from a few of my colleagues tonight that maybe Councilor Kretovic and others that they're interested in producing some kind of statement and that it is important, and I would agree with that, but that we might need some time to edit that statement so that everyone can come to some kind of agreement. I think obviously, as we had discussed before when we were thinking about doing this on others subject matters, obviously the statement is a lot more powerful if it comes with a unanimous vote from the entire council, and so I think that's probably the goal that you would want to go for. I would want to give a nod, though, quickly to Councilor Keach, because I think that in many ways he's correct. I guess we will recognize the issues of importance when we see them, but it can also be a slippery slope where you're making statements all the time as a body, and then you're basically watering down the effect of them. Oh, that's just the council again saying such and such about this particular issue. So I think we do have to be very careful about that. But I would certainly agree that this issue is something that touches all of us, and it is worthy of making a statement. Again, though, with some kind of acknowledgement of the fact that we've already put in a lot of hard work on this, and that's been evident, I think, in the performance of our police department and the other entities that came about that Councilor Kretovic referenced. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Knight.
Thank you, Your Honor. Recognizing all that's been said, a lot of very poignant information that's been shared. I would suggest and make a motion that we table this issue for further discussion, perhaps even after the Public Safety Board has met. Maybe even extending an offer to the police department, the police chief, and others within the city staff that maybe they want to be part of this statement. It's a message which, if we want to have the most significant impact that we desire, there's a way to go about garnering even more support for it than perhaps we even have now. So I make a motion to table this and for further discussion pending the work of the Public Safety Committee and input from others.
Okay, there were several people who did have their hands raised, and I want to recognize before we move on. Councilor Grady Sexton.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd just like to say that I've heard from every one of the councilors that there is a deep personal commitment with each of them to advance racial justice within our city. And I would hate for this vote to be divided in any way. And so I too would certainly prefer to work on this together and not just have an aspirational statement. I'd like to have within a statement some action items that this committee or this city is willing and very interested in advancing to ensure that we are doing what is right. So I agree with those that would like some time to do this in a way that we can have a unanimous sort of support for a statement.
Councilor Pierce.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to echo Councilor Grady Sexton's recent comments. I don't think there's anything wrong with coming up with a statement that tells our citizens who we are and what we do and how we get there and how we've arrived here. I would support tabling it. I would love to work with Councilor Rice Hawkins to see what we can do and not have it focus on just the police, but really get back to the community as a whole. So I don't know that it's ready for prime time yet, but I support doing something about it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilor Patterson.
Thank you, Your Honor. I want to thank Councilor Rice Hawkins for at least taking the lead and putting together the language. It just came in right before the meeting started, so I really haven't had any time to work through it. But I would say that I agree generally with everything that's in there. Word choices, obviously, we can all differ on. But to echo part of what Councilor Grady Sexton said, I'm much more interested in the actions that we're going to take as a council. Words are pretty hollow if there's no follow-up and no action. So my focus is really on what are the action items that we're going to take up? What are the things that we can do better, whether it's the police or anything else? And so that's what I'm really interested in.
Mayor Pro Tem Bouchard.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And thank you, Councilor Rice Hawkins. I appreciate the effort, and I think it's very well written. But I do think when hearing from all the other counselors that, we need to work on this as a group. And I really do like the idea of, because we, as a community, we have been very proactive and very open and very inclusive, but of course we have more work to do. And as Councilor Grady Sexton highlighted, that the Public Safety Committee will be meeting and we will have some action items, and will be an opportunity for the public and everyone else in other departments in the police department to weigh in on a statement. And so with that, I think I would support the tabling motion. And I was wondering, Mr. Mayor, when you would think we could come back to work on a statement.
So honestly, that was another job to myself. I've heard two things. So I heard the motion by Councilor Nyan to table this until after the Public Safety Advisory Committee. I'm not it's up to the group what you want to do. Do you want to wait that long? Or do you want to come back next week? We do have to. We still have to talk about the manager's evaluation. So we will be coming back for a non-public session, most likely next week. We could take it up. One thing I will say is this will not be done behind closed doors in private. This will be a public discussion for everyone to see. We need to be transparent about exactly what our feelings are and what we want to say. So this is not a non-public session discussion, but we will be back for non-public in terms of 91A and manager's evaluation. You can take it up then. So
I would rather.
That's one option, or we wait, but there's two avenues.
I would rather do it sooner than later.
Okay. Let me keep going. I still have Councilor Todd.
Oh, yes, Your Honor. I was just going to suggest that my understanding is that there is a timing factor, and perhaps you're hinting at that. I know that Councilor Rice Hawkins is thinking of that in terms of getting a message out sooner rather than later. Although I do believe that, thankfully, this issue is not going anywhere anytime soon. It is going to be around with us until change has come. But I do think that there is a little bit more strength in getting some kind of a statement out first. So I also would be in favor of moving forward. And there's also nothing that precludes the council from making two statements. One statement could simply be where we recognize the various issues, and the follow-up statement could include, at such time when we've had a chance to hear the Public Safety Committee and other groups weigh in, what steps and action items we'd want to bring forward. Thank you.
Thank you. I have Councilor Matson, I believe, was raising your hand. Councilor Matson, you're on mute.
Councillor Todd preempted my thought of having the possibility of something going out sooner and then following up with action, which is fine. Thank you.
Okay. Councilor Rice-Hawkins.
Thank you, and I thank you everyone for entertaining this conversation tonight. As I said, and several of you referenced, I know that issuing a statement of this nature is very different for Concord City Council, and I appreciate those of you who recognize the critical moment we're in as a nation right now. It's really a defining moment for us. I will withdraw my motion to advance this tonight with the expectation we'll take this up next week. And if the mayor can give the best step forward for how to, if we need to make that motion or if we just refer that to a meeting. Thank you.
Okay. So, did Councilor Hatfield, did you withdraw your second as well?
I would be happy to.
Okay. So, since we have no pending motion, there's really nothing to table, Councilor Nyan. So, I'm not going to recognize that motion. Here's what I'm going to suggest. The consensus was we want to do something. That's what I heard. The question is exactly what or what those words are. We need to all kind of brainstorm and put that together. So I think that the Public Safety Advisory Committee has a very specific agenda, and it is in my personal opinion, a pretty extensive agenda. That's going to be a full meeting. And so I think maybe I view this, and I tried to say this last week, this is going to be a very long process. And for many of you who said this is about deliverables, that's very much what it is about in my mind. These are action steps that we need to take. We need to do a lot of listening as well. Instead of just spouting off, I think we need to hear from people who are affected more than anything else. So I would suggest that one of the last items we're going to do is we have to get together for the manager's evaluation. I was going to see what people's availability for next week was going to be. And perhaps we could have a public meeting prior to the manager's evaluation to discuss wording for an initial statement. Would that sound reasonable to everyone? And that way everyone has, I believe, Councilor Rice-Hawkins has sent the language to everyone. So you all have a basis in which to start from. And I would encourage you all in that interim to put down your own thoughts as well. I'm going to ask you not to share them on the internet because I don't want you having a meeting. We can't have a meeting over email. I'm just going to ask you to jot them down for yourself and then share them at the public meeting. Does that sound reasonable to everyone?
Yes.
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 Okay.
Thank you.
Alrighty. So with that, I guess it's timely to ask, what is the availability of people next week to meet? Well, any opportunity to meet on the 24th, which is a Wednesday, by chance?
That works for me, Your Honor.
Good for me, Your Honor.
Yes. It works.
Okay, seems like I'm getting a lot of thumbs up and a lot of yeses. Mr.
What
Manager,
time would we be meeting?
what time would be good for you all? I saw 5:30 from the top corner.
Yes.
I have a commitment at 8 p.m. for a meeting that night, so I was
5:30 works outstanding. I'll get you out of here for your commitment.
that's perfect.
I like it. Time certain. That's wonderful. Mr. Manager, can you do the 24th?
Do I have to decide now? I plan on taking some vacation after the budget was done.
We can do your evaluation without you, I guess.
That'd be good. Yeah, I guess I'll be there the 24th.
Your Honor, I too am unavailable on the 24th.
Okay. Well, let me try it again. Mr. Manager, is there any time next week that you are available?
Only on the 24th. Really, I can do the 24th. That works.
Can you do how about the 22nd? How about Monday the 22nd? got 1 yes. I got 2 yes.
For me.
It's good for me.
I got 3. Give me 3. Give me 3. Got 4. Got 4. Got 4. Got 4. Got 5. Got 5. 6. 6.
Is there a question for Councilor Champlin? Do we have a parking committee meeting that night?
Well, since it's not on my calendar, probably.
Thanks for the help.
How about the parking committee meets on the 24th?
No, I think we have a meeting on the 29th, Counselor. But
okay, one more time. Mr. Manager, can you make the 22nd?
I can make the 22nd or the 24th.
22nd. We have confirmation on the 22nd. We'll meet at 5:30. And Madam Clerk, if you could post that public meeting, the discussion will be regarding to Councilor Rice Hawkins' proposed statement. And then we will be adjourning, recessing to a non-public session for the purposes of discussing the manager's evaluation.
Will do.
Thank you very much, Madam Clerk. Councilor Rice Hawkins, I still have your hand up. Do you have anything you'd like to share?
I did, yes. I also just wanted to encourage counselors in the meantime. Concord TV has a really great clip of the conversation from last week, which does have some of those action-oriented steps in it. I know I've posted it up and in some community forums and would encourage others to do the same. And if you haven't already, to also post a statement about your kind of perspective and support, because I do think there has been a lot of questions in the community, even with some of the news stories. So if we can all work to make sure folks know where we stand, to be important. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. Anyone else have any other closing remarks they'd like to make before we move to adjourn? Mr. Manager, do you have anything you'd like to share with us in the final?
Yes.
Okay. Seeing none.
Motion to adjourn?
Actually, I apologize. Council Nyan raised his hand.
Thank you. I just wanted to reiterate as we close this out, thank you very much to the manager and his staff, in particular the finance staff, who put together the budget, and we appreciate it. It's going to be a tough year, but all the right decisions have been made, so thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Last chance. Last chance. Oh, okay, sorry.
It's Last Dance, isn't it?
That was close, wasn't it? All right. Seeing no one else, Councilor Keach makes the motion to adjourn, seconded by Councilor Fennessy. Madam Clerk, if you can call the roll, please.
Councilor Bouchard.
Yes.
Mayor Boulay.
Yes.
Councilor Champlin.
yes.
Councilor Fennessy.
Yes.
Councilor Grady Sexton.
Yes.
Councilor Hatfield.
Yes.
Councilor Keach.
Wrong, yes.
Councilor Kennison.
Yes.
Councilor Kretovic.
No.
Councilor Jackson.
Yes. I'm
Councilor
overriding
Ryan.
Councilor Kretovic's vote.
It was my motion. It wasn't Fred's.
Councilor Nyan.
Yes.
Councilor Pierce.
Yes.
Councilor Rice Hawkins.
Yes.
Councilor Todd.
Yes.
And Councilor Warner.
Yes.
Okay, well, thank you, everyone. We are now adjourned. Have a wonderful week. Be safe, and we'll see you soon. Thank you.
Thank you.